Good afternoon. My name is Rob Krebs. I'm the new CEO here at the Connecticut Historical Society, and it's my pleasure to welcome such a great crowd to what promises to be a very interesting panel discussion. How the Scottsboro boys can help us talk about the history of racism. I'd like to take a moment to thank the staff at the Connecticut Historical Society for what they do every day, especially Natalie Ballinger, Adult Programs Manager, and Yvette Soto, Building Manager, for their part in bringing this program to you tonight. You need to be aware that this event will be broadcast on YouTube Live, and it can be watched in real time if you want to use your phone, or you can log on afterwards and see it anytime on CHS's Facebook page. We're very delighted with the turnout this afternoon. I see a lot of familiar faces, even though I've just been here for about 2 months, but also a lot of new people. If this is your first time here, I want to encourage you to come again. Bring a friend and consider joining as a member. As a private nonprofit organization, we fund the preservation and presentation of the cultural and material history of our state for the public, and your support helps make that possible. We've operated through private philanthropy for 194 years and hope that you will help us to continue our mission with your charitable support. I hope that many of you have been able to see our exhibition, Black Citizenship in the Age of Jim Crow. The exhibit will be closed after this particular event, but it will be open to the public until September 14th, so you have plenty of time to be able to come back. Next month, we're fortunate to be welcoming one of the historians who consulted in the development of that exhibition, Dr. Eric Foner, the DeWitt Clinton Professor Emeritus of History at Columbia University. He's one of this country's most prominent historians, and he'll be here on September 12th to talk about his latest book, The Second Founding: How the Civil War and Reconstruction Remade the Constitution. One of the things that I'd like you to know about me is that I love collaborations. I know they can be a challenge, but when they work well, like they are tonight, it can be richly rewarding for everyone involved. I'd like to thank the staff at Playhouse on Park for approaching this organization about doing a joint program and for pulling together this amazing talent. I had the pleasure of seeing the Scottsboro boys last week and was very impressed. I ran into one of the cast members at Hall's Market over the weekend and thanked him for his performance. He asked that I tell my friends that they should all go and see the play. And so now that you are all my friends, and if you haven't seen the play, you really need to. Speaking of new friends, I briefly met Tracy Flater, Executive Director of Playhouse on the Park that evening, and I ask you to join me in welcoming her to the podium to say a few words and to introduce the moderator this evening, Valeria Caldwell. Thank you.
Good evening. As you said, I'm Tracy Flater. I'm one of the co-founders and executive director at Playhouse on the Park. We are so incredibly lucky to be here, and I also want to begin by thanking Rob and Natalie and the staff here at the Connecticut Historical Society for embracing this collaboration so willingly. It was about a year ago that I first came over and met and really just put our season on the table and said, do you think that there's any synergy with any of our shows? And who would have guessed that this amazing exhibit upstairs would have making its first stop on a national tour right at the same time as we're doing the Scottsboro Boys. So I'm so grateful. It's part of what we aspire to do as a professional theater is not just produce work for you to come and see, but really reach out to the community and find ways to expand our offerings and further them more. So thank you for being here. One of the things that we really aspire to do, or one of our biggest missions at the theater, is to produce relevant work, and you'll hear Sean and Darlene who I'll introduce in a moment, that not just entertains, but also inspires and challenges you. And I think this show does just that. And we've been so fortunate to have a lot of support. We've had a talk back after every single performance, but having this panel has given us the opportunity to go further with the conversation, and we're really looking forward to that. With us this evening, I would be remiss in not introducing Sean Harris and Darlene Zola, who are the co-founders, also co-artistic directors, but they also, lots of titles. Sean directed the show and Darlene choreographed the show, so we're grateful to have them here. I have a number of board members. I also have a number of board members who are in attendance, so if anybody who's on our board wants to raise their hand, they have been so incredibly supportive of this project and I have the great pleasure to turn it over to the vice president of my board, who is also the chair of our Scottsboro subcommittee, which was put together to really educate and enlighten and strengthen the community for this official. Nina Elga. Thank you very much, Tracy. It is my pleasure to introduce the moderator and each of our panelists today. Attorney Valeria Caldwell Gaines is General Counsel to Charter Oak Health Center and previously served as at the Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities in a variety of capacities. As acting, including as acting executive director. She has a master's in social work at the University of Louisville and received her JD from the University of Connecticut School of Law. I first knew Attorney Caldwell Gaines when she was in private practice, handling child protection and family matters as a zealous but compassionate and effective advocate for children and families in the child protection courts. I had the privilege of engaging with her in some of the most thoughtful, earnest, and candid conversations in these past few months about the production and its potential to help us understand the history of racial injustice. Her intelligent and probing questions and willingness to listen, challenge, and engage with an open-hearted mind made me realize that she would be an excellent moderator for this panel. Professor Diana Pollan came to us by virtue of a recommendation by one of our enthusiastic students and graduate of Trinity College, Bhumika Chitari, who might be here in the audience. and one of her colleagues. Professor Paulin is a professor of American Studies and English at Trinity College. She earned her BA at Georgetown, her master's in literature, English literature at the University of Washington, and her PhD in English and American literature at Stanford. At Trinity, she has a joint appointment in American Studies and English, as she did previously at Yale, where she also had secondary appointments in African American Studies and Theater Studies. Relevant to this forum, she won the 2013 Errol Hill Award for Outstanding Scholarship in African American Theater Studies, and published in among many other relevant journals, chapters in the critical anthology of African American performance in theater history. Professor Paulin was also a production consultant to the Scottsboro Boys production. We're incredibly grateful for her support. And I should add that both Attorney Valerie Culver-Gaines and Professor Paulin were facilitators at two of our talks. Dr. Frank Mitchell is the Executive Director of the Amistad Center for Art and Culture. His advanced degrees include a doctor in philosophy from the University of Michigan, a Master of Arts degree in African American Studies from Yale. Dr. Mitchell caught my attention not only by recommendations, but as a result of an interview by Christopher Arnott in the Hartford Current last year, entitled "Frank Mitchell Helps People Hold Difficult Conversations About Race, Culture, and Equity." The article covered a range of responses, including emotional, that the works at the center produce, from celebratory to disorienting and depressing. He is a strong advocate for the arts and equity in the arts, and was quoted as saying that the work at the center is complicated and difficult material that people want to get out there. Deep historical overtones within an artistic context. We wouldn't be doing the collection right if we didn't put out the stuff that's hard to talk about. At the same time, we don't want people to feel ambushed. We put the works on view and give people the resources to manage their feelings. If you're going to put material on view that people construe in different ways, it feels responsible to help them. When I reached out to him, he happened to have seen the Broadway production of the Scottsboro Boys, which, as some of you was nominated for 12 Tony nominations, which he said he also liked and shared, that he was impressed that the Playhouse was putting on this production. So since then, he, as I mentioned, like Professor Paulin and Attorney Culver-Gaines, agreed to be facilitators for our talkbacks, and now moderators. Clearly, his voice too is one that would be important for us to hear, and I thank him as well as the other panelists for their willingness to be here. Now, Chief Justice Richard Robinson, I'm particularly proud to say, is also here today. I forgot to mention that I'm also an appellate court judge, and so the Chief Justice is not only the Chief Justice of our Supreme Court, presiding over the cases that come before it, he oversees, by virtue of his position, our entire judicial branch. That includes 39 courthouses, including our Supreme and appellate courts, 257 judges, senior judges, and judge trial referees, and 3,700 employees, as well as countless facilities and programs. At the end of fiscal year 2008, our Superior Courts disposed of 550,000 cases. So, to get his attention is no mean feat. So I was most grateful for his enthusiastic willingness to share his thoughts and insights today on the history of the Scottsboro Boys, legal implications of the U.S. Supreme Court decisions that were generated from these trials, as well as work with the judicial branch around these issues, including but not limited to his own work in heading up the advisory committee on cultural competency. As you can see from his bio, he has garnered numerous awards, which are too many to name, except for one, the most prestigious of all in the opinion of most jurists, being the Henry J. Narek Judiciary Award for Integrity. Having had the privilege of knowing the Chief Justice as a colleague and friend, could not be more deserved. Finally, perhaps most importantly, he is going to share with us his perspective as the first African-American Chief Justice of our Supreme Court. I could not be more thrilled to welcome our Chief Justice to this meeting. So, thank you again for giving us this opportunity to share insights on these panelists and
Good evening. And thank you, Judge Elmo. That's that I called her Nina. But when you had your objections overruled time and time again with the resounding sound of the gavel, somehow another judge just kind of fixed it. But before I get started, I have a confession to make. And that is, I now know what Thomas Jefferson must have been feeling when he said at the outset of his first inaugural address in 1801, and I paraphrase, I am grateful and thankful for the favor that has been shown me by this offer to serve as your moderator for this event, which no doubt is difficult to discuss and embody a number of complex issues. He didn't say that, I said that. However, I look upon the vastness of this assembly, and I realize that this is way above my talents. But despite those shortcomings, I can promise you that I will attempt to carry out the duties in a manner in which the greatness of the charge and the weakness of my powers so justly inspire. How many of you present this evening have had the opportunity to see the Playhouse on Park's production of Scottsboro? Oh, wonderful. Oh, wonderful. And how many of you have had the opportunity to see the Connecticut Historical Society's exhibition on Black citizenship? Oh, this is just awesome. I asked those questions because for those of you who answered yes to any of the questions, I suspect that that's part of the reason that brought me here. For those of you who have not yet seen the play or the exhibit, we recognize that your mere presence is also a valuable statement about the need and the desire to engage this complex issue and all of its attending circumstances. As for me, my decision to accept first the offer by Judge Elgo to facilitate one of the talkbacks did not come easy. Indeed, when the judge first phoned me and asked if I would join her for lunch, well, I wasn't practicing then, but she is the judge. When the judge calls and invites you to lunch, you say, yes, Your Honor. And so I did. After sharing pleasantries in a nicely selected restaurant, Judge Elgo, in her calm, always calm and respectful manner, started to tell me about her work with the Playhouse on Park. And immediately I felt her passion, not only for the theater, but for some of the thought-provoking plays that you have brought forward. And so she really had my attention because I love the arts. Still didn't know why I was there though, but okay. But she would go on to tell me about the theater's upcoming last play of the season, the Scottsboro Board. Well, if you study in law school or even in high school, or even if you couldn't recall the facts of the case, you knew it was a big case. So I was even more intrigued. She told me that there would be a talkback after each show and asked if I would serve as one of the facilitators. And I was just about to say yes, to the judge when she said, "There's one more thing. The story is told in a musical minstrelsy." Oh, what? But we were in the restaurant. So I couldn't faint, and I had to keep my voice at a restaurant respectable level. But that is exactly what I felt. What? True to her essence, she remained calm, respecting and absorbing my reaction, and I'm sure sensing now my reluctance. And I remained reluctant throughout the lunch and after the lunch. I couldn't commit then, and I couldn't commit during her follow-up call in the next couple of days. But I have so much admiration and respect for her persistency, the preparedness by the Playhouse, and her sure ability to persuade me. Let me know that she was definitely a member of the bar. She had worked all of those things with me. But she didn't just do it by talking. The Playhouse didn't just do it by calling us up and asking us would we do it. They truly endeavored to help us get to the place where we could say yes. And as I stand here before you, I'm really glad I said yes. I didn't know this would be a part of it, but I'm glad I said yes to the talk record. I think what was going on for me, perhaps what was going on for a lot of you, African Americans in particular, is that this minstrel format is both troubling and triggering. Not only because of the history and the tragic nightmare of the Scottsboro boys, but even more so because of what we're going through today. So I got there. I got to the point of saying yes to Judge Elba. I would later embark upon a lot of research on my own. I would meet and converse with some of my fellow facilitators, a very impressive list, I must say. And I attended a rehearsal at the University of Hartford to just hear and feel the musical aspect. I would then go to the final dress rehearsal. I had to work to get myself, once I said yes, to the point of being able to honor that commitment with all that is within me and that I knew was stirring in me. On the evening of the final dress rehearsal, I sat alongside a number of my other colleague facilitators. And well, I'll bring it up a little bit later in some of my questioning, but I certainly felt what I know now, having gone back and read a little bit of Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois and Frederick Douglass and just so many people who have lended their voice to these issues long before me. I knew what I was experiencing was what Dr. Du Bois referred to as the, I think it's the two-ness. And that two-ness he described is really about being an American and being Black in America. And so you've always got that pull and tug, so to speak. And no less was true for me the night that I went to the final dress rehearsal, where a piece of me truly humored by some aspects and wanting to laugh, felt as though I shouldn't be laughing at that. A piece of me wanting to loudly applaud the sheer talent on display in front of my eyes by men who look like my son, but feeling as though I shouldn't be clapping at that. I suspect a lot of us continue to deal with that too. And I think what I'll do rather than speculate is to go to one of our experts to get our panel discussion going. And Dr. Mitchell, you've heard about him, you've heard about his extensive work. But what I heard, firstly, in relationship to this production and tonight's discussion, Dr. Mitchell, was that you saw the production when it first played in New York. Is that correct? That's like a cross-examination question. And, you start out and they can only give yes or no answers. So that's correct. And you saw it in its original format. Is that correct? Okay. And I asked that because the last question I want to ask before I ask you the question and allow you time to speak to it is that was that original format both in minstrel complete with blackface?
It was blackface.
So, for so many of you who've seen the play at the Playhouse, you know that the blackface was not a part of the Playhouse production, and they gave a lot of consideration and deliberation to that, and decided they just didn't need it to get the story told. But Dr. Mitchell, could you share with us what it was like seeing the show for the first time as an American, a Black man, an artist yourself, and one who has spent your life work studying and helping us to talk about some of these complex images and issues?
Now, ready to pick this up. Thanks for that question. Thank you all for coming out tonight to discuss the production. I will not lie. It is always shocking to encounter these moments of racial spectacle. And I understand that I have a privileged perspective because I'm young enough that I didn't grow up with the opportunity to go to see minstrel shows. My father certainly is old enough to have experienced them. My grandparents definitely did. So my sense of them is certainly as historical remnants, fascinating artifacts from American history, but not as an attack against me personally. I am impressed that Cameron and Ed, as they were wrestling with the Scottsboro case, understood and recognized it as an early moment in American history of a sort of racial spectacle in the 20th century. And the convergence of artists and activists and progressives and civil rights leaders all coming together to try and free these young men, which was wildly unexpected by the power structure in Alabama. And seeing that as an opportunity to critique minstrelsy as a performance idiom and being bold enough to try and take that on at a time when it still would have been pretty cavalier. So it is impressive. It's dangerous and scary and hard to watch at times, but great art should do that, to force you into a place where you wouldn't necessarily go if you have to, and they can talk about it. In that sense, they're doing us all a service. Certainly today, as you mentioned, everywhere you go, it seems like somebody pops up in blackface from their yearbook or school photo or some other spot in the So these forms are still around with us, and it's essential we talk about them. If we don't talk about them, then they really do want to push us in the way around the world. I'm
manage a collection that has a lot of material hidden inside of it, and we're always wrestling with how to balance the celebratory material.
The things that are a little harder to see.
Things that are harder to see.
And it is a discipline. We are getting better and better at that. And I credit the audiences here in Hartford who come out to see our shows and who are invested in asking us to talk about this material and show them how we present what we think might be a little challenging. 10 years ago, we would put one thing on review and know we'd get questions, and we'd wait for those questions, we were prepared. And now people come in and they expect to see more, and we are confident in putting more material out and programming around it. 10 years ago, we accepted land text art into the collection. It came from Connecticut, from the Danbury area. And at the meetings, the extension meetings, like, when did we ever use this? But we had a show a year later. There was a need for a land text art. So we brought it up. And it was definitely hard to have it in the galleries, to figure out how to place it, how to guide people into it, how to talk about it, how to get them out. But practice, and we're really good at it. And we don't look forward to that opportunity, but we're glad to have that chance to push people into those kind of conversations.
Thank you. Mr. Chief Justice, I am wondering, can you hear me okay? I am wondering if you would like to speak to that issue.
Well, can you hear me? Race is a really, really tough thing to talk about. And one of the things that is amazing to me is when we have these conversations, we never even talk about what race is. And does race really exist? Are we talking about something that's biological? Are we talking about social construct? We know that if somebody looks like me, see that as a black man. If someone looks like you, they see you as a white woman. When someone looks at my wife, she calls herself ethnically ambiguous because she doesn't seem to fit in any of those kinds of categories. So race is extremely complicated. And I don't know if you've seen it in National Geographic, there was a cover where there were fraternal twins to an interracial couple. And one you look at and you identify her as black, the other one as white. And they were sisters with the same biology. Yet we look at these kids and we say one's black and one's white. So when I do my talks about race, one of the first things I talk about is how tough it is, just to make people feel more comfortable about talking about it. So we talk about minstrel shows. If you think about it, that is like the key symbol of racism in America. It's really tough to deal with it. And so for me as a black man, I see it. And people think it ends with Al Jolson. If you are old enough, I wasn't playing quagenarian until last year. The next way of saying I was 59. But I can remember 1960s television. There were shows like Jasper, where there was a little black, David and Goliath was sort of like a public show. This one had a little black kid who was blackface. And he was always being outdone by the scarecrow. So it was a minstrel show, and that was basically in the 60s. And I can remember as a kid, now being offended at it, just sort of watching it. And now I think, whoa, what was it doing? So minstrel means something very, very significant. It's like a totem for black folks. We look at this and we go, that is a symbol of American racism. And it's something that's very hard to look at, so through our lens. When this show, when minstrel shows use it as a vehicle, it's hard to get past that. But if you think about it, it's a very good vehicle to bring out this painful thing into the open. Because we as Americans have a real problem with dealing with our history. Our history is a spotty history. Our history is one, don't get me wrong, I think the ideal of America is incredible. I think the history of America is problematic. We need to embrace the history totally, the good and the bad, in order for us to continue this conversation and understand where we are today. A lot of folks who don't understand our history have a problem with really connecting with what's going on and why do we have such difficulty in talking about race, because it's connected to our history. And events like a blackface incident really reminds us, Black folks, reminds us of how troubled that history was. But to use it as a vehicle like this, I think wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. It's just we need to sit there, put it in context, and be able to talk about it.
That is such an excellent segue for me to bring Dr. Professor Poland into the discussion, because I recall in my preparatory work attending an event where she and I first had the opportunity to have a lengthy exchange about issues of race, Scottsboro Boys Play in particular. And I recall our conversation was about the difficulty, to use the Chief Justice word, and to certainly embrace that difficulty. We're talking about the difficulty we sometimes have just watching a movie depicting our history. We both shared that we had never watched and had no desire to watch 12 Years a Slave. At the time, the famous African-American female director, her name escapes me, had just released a movie, When You See Us, telling the story of the Duvernay, yes. Telling the story of what was dubbed the Central Park Five, which you know has a lot of parallels to Scottsboro Boys. We were both sharing that we had difficulty, and up to that point had difficulty even bringing ourselves to watch that. And I still have. When she shared with me that she just had watched it, it's been out for a while, and not forced, but probably forced. Look, invited her 14-year-old son, I think it was, to watch it as well, and talked about the value in doing so. When Judge Elgo introduced you, she talked about your work, I think she said, in the theater as well, having to do with some of these issues, African American theater. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to the relationship between lived experiences and stage representations. Or I think I want to try to state it just a little bit differently. Can you talk about how 9 African American male performers who doubtlessly have a deep understanding of their history are living in America in 2019, go out 8 times a week and do a show where the theatrical vocabulary and the very form in which the show is produced has historically stereotyped, as Justice Robinson just spoke to, African Americans. And we know that our Black actors and actresses have to play those roles, sometimes if they just want to work. So can you talk about a little bit about the lived experience and the stage performance and what all of that invokes?
Okay. That's a really big question, but I thank you. And I also want to just echo what Dr. Mitchell said, that I also feel like I'm coming to this from a privileged position as well as an academic, but also someone who's involved in theater and who has looked at theatrical representations historically My mother actually is turning 90 next month, and she remembers she went to high school with Medgar Evers. She grew up in Mississippi, and so that's her. Like, oh yeah, he was a good twin, a good brother, because they're two brothers. And so things like that that were so much a part of her life that I am looking at, from this perspective of the way in which we stage, talking, also the notion of what race means and what race is. And I think that one of the things, to sort of speak to the first part of your question about theater itself, and particularly in a theater that's such an intimate space. It's not, I tell my students, there was, when minstrelsy was being staged and performed in all these different venues, there was no TV, there was no phone, there was no YouTube, this was one of the ways in which people came together and the ways in which they represented what was happening culturally. And I think about that because historically, what whites who were putting on blackface were doing were expressing both anxiety and fear and racism about Black people, but also anxiety about their own positions as whites. Because whiteness, also in terms of talking about Black and white, what races, whiteness has never been a consolidated category. There's not one thing that white is. Over the years, it's a category that we think of in terms of white supremacy and power that people have been included in or excluded from. And so there's a range of whiteness. A great historian who I really admire, Matt Jacobson, wrote a book called Whiteness of a Different Color that talks about the different ways in which people came to America, came to the US, and became white, how the Irish became white, how different Italians were lynched and thought as non-white, and what makes the excluded from white, and how that operates. So, yet, there's always this divide between Black and white, even though there's why is it that Blackness becomes this marker of the most abject, the bottom of the hierarchy continually. And I think part of it has to do with clearly a history of power and difference and white supremacy and having to maintain that, but also the way in which Blackness comes to represent a lack of power in living here, a lack of citizenship, a lack of rights, and excluded from those avenues. And the lack of language, we're talking about this. And so to get back to the notion of theater, if you don't have words, what are the other things in which what cultural work can theater do in the theatrical space and stagings of identity to allow us other ways to access these experiences, or what a minstrel scholar calls a way in which you are interested in drawn to something but repulsed by it. And that's kind of what minstrelsy was really also one of the things that was going on was people, whites were attracted to something they didn't understand and also fearful. So this kind of complex tension between fear and pain, anxiety, and intimacy, because even slave masters and their slaves were in intimate states. We sort of get that sense, I think, going back to the idea of the past of African American women, Black men, and when I was watching that God song, particularly when I was 4, but this Black man and woman who was also in a play, embodying the tension and complexity of all of the sort of historical weight of racism, racialized violence, gendered violence, and I hope we'll talk a little bit also about these men who were not only coming out and living and staging this trauma, both imposing violence and using the language, historical language that was used at the time, but also being subjected to it. And also with women's violence, a Black woman who's in the periphery and that has this sort of symbolically powerful role. And also these Black men who are living, I'm talking 2019 in a way, in a community in a time in which Black masculinity is really overproduce and playing these women's roles, you know, in the way in which that overlaps with Black men's identity, Black women's identity, white women's mobility, and all these things that are coming together in the play. And I think I don't even need to really, my talk back was really, I learned so much from the actors themselves, and they talked about the way in which they could study those roles and look at the history of the Scottsboro boys, but they also could draw from their own experiences as Black men in 2019 and 2018, in all these different stages of their lives. So going back to Central Park 5, the way in which, for us, that's, I think of what I was doing in 1989, and how so much of the sort of trauma gets staged and gets played out, but also the way in which movement, looking at a choreographer, the way in which they both move in and embody that trauma, but they also let some of it go, you know, and what music can do, and the way in which the sort of musicality goes. I don't want to hum a tune about I was singing on the way here or something, you know, and then I was like, wait, I'm talking about a song where it's like this scene of a fictional rape, you know, and but yet, what does music, what does this embodiment, what does this visual representation do? What kind of cultural work does it do that language can't do? And I think that's what the actors sort of talk about. Yes, that's hard. That's work going out every night. And I'm sure their nights have been made into very well. There are ways in which things trigger all kinds of new events going on all the time out beyond stage. But that intimate space allowed them to have a conversation that didn't need words. And it did raise, it did generate emotion, anger, sadness, anxiety for viewers, but also the performers. She said, we can see you, by the way. You can see it, you know, and I'm looking at them with locking eyes. In that way in which that conversation is not about the right word. It's about experiencing and playing out these things that are both historical, contemporary, that each person brings into the theater with them. And also we take out, and that's where the conversation continues.
Wow, that's a lot to try to unpack. And I think one of the questions that there are a lot of things I want to say. I won't say too much because I really want Chief Justice to tell us about the justice system during that time. But I wanted to just pick up on 2 points, I guess, and by way of a question. I'm wondering, I talked a little bit about the range of emotions that I went through trying to get to literally this place, or just to even be able to do this. And this is to any member of the panel. I'm making the assumption only because it's true for me. And it's true for me, I know, because I can't watch certain movies and so forth. Why do you think we as Black Americans, African Americans, continue to be traumatized, deeply affected by seeing some of those images? You know, I'm an attorney. I do okay. You guys are doing just fine as well. And yet, Professor Paulson, you and I were talking about literally the difficulty that we had just watching this on screen. Can you speak to what might be going on there? Am I suffering from some leftover trauma from helping? It's a call for help. Any one of you can speak to it if you can.
One of the things that I find is that people tend to think of things like slavery being hundreds of years ago and Jim Crow being lifetimes ago. But the daily trauma that Black people suffer still occurs. Now, this program is called Scottsboro, and one of the themes that ran through that trial, and I'm only paraphrasing the judge, but Leibowitz comes down from New York representing these young black men. And he doesn't understand the culture that he's in. He doesn't understand Alabama. He doesn't understand race in the South. And so he goes there with the intention of being this New York lawyer who's going to go down there and save these kids. But the judge schooled him. And the judge at one point said, I will take, and I'm paraphrasing, I will take the word, the lowliest white woman, over that most pious black man. That is our culture. And so you're dealing with that culture. Now, the problem is that culture, although it's not explicit anymore, still happens in various ways. And let me give you an example. One of the things that I've been doing along with Karen Camille at UConn Law School is we tell stories in order to have these difficult conversations. So let me tell you a story. One day I'm riding my motorcycle in Stamford, Connecticut. My cousins are actually here, which surprised me, and so they probably know about my motorcycle riding days, which I prefer they didn't tell those stories. But I was riding my motorcycle, and I was coming up West Main Street, and a Fritos truck makes this left turn in front of a motorcycle. When you're riding a bike, one of the most dangerous things is left turn in front of me. And I hit the truck, fell over, and I get up, and I look at the guy, and he gets out of his truck, and he says, I didn't see you, I'm so sorry. So we got the police there. His story morphed from, I'm sorry I didn't see you, to the fact he said that I was racing up the street on my motorcycle. He saw another motorcycle over on the side, and there was a bike over there, and the bike got owned by a friend of mine. But I knew the bike was parked out there all night. He said I was racing that motorcycle, and that I hit his truck, and I was going too fast for him to see me. There were 4 or 5 other witnesses to this accident who all told the police officer that the guy was lying. They were black. I am black. The guy driving the truck was white. The police officer was white. When I got the police report, it said that I was racing the other motorcycle up the street and I hit this truck. Now, I told the police officer at the time of the accident, go and check the other bike because it's ice cold. There's no way this guy's telling the truth. Yet he was believed over me. Once again, it was, I will believe the word of the white person over the most pious black man. I gotta tell you, even though I am Chief Justice of the Connecticut Supreme Court, I am still afraid of that happening. So that is the reality of living in brown skin. That if a situation occurs, whether it will actually happen or not, we're still afraid that we will not be believed merely because of our physical condition. That's why these situations are so traumatizing.
I think we all have a story to tell. Couldn't help but hear the echoes of Chief Justice Kenner in my ears as you spoke, resounding in history that a black man has no rights, that a white man is bound to respect. Now, Mr. Chief Justice, I am going to come directly to you, but before I pose a question, it is at this point that I am going to take full advantage of the opportunity to say to you how proud I am as an American, an African-American woman, a practicing attorney of the bar. Saddens me on the one hand to still have to refer to the first, but it is with enormous pride that I stand here sharing the space with you and knowing that you are our first Black Chief Justice. I think everybody in Connecticut. Now, I want you to help us talk a little bit about that period of Jim Crow that the Scottsboro boys trial seemingly, not seemingly, did take place in, that whole Jim Crow era. I think if I recall correctly, they were pulled off that train and arrested in about 1931, went to trial, was indicted fairly quickly thereafter, perhaps a week or so later, convicted fairly quickly after that. And the saga went on and on and on. I don't know the year of the last trial. I think I want to say it was somewhere around, they went through 4 trials, they went through hell. Most of you have seen the play, so you don't need me to recant that for you, but I say that as a way to just call up that era, because it was during that era that slavery had been abolished, 1868, in the abolishment of slavery under the 13th Amendment. I believe the second clause of the 13th Amendment told us that Congress has the power to abolish all badges and incidents of slavery. So not only was slavery abolished, Congress was given the express power to abolish all badges and incidents of slavery. We had the 14th Amendment, having conferred citizenship upon African Americans, and in the same amendment, guaranteeing us due process of the law. We had the 15th Amendment, which gave the right to vote to Black men. Small, but that was something. Later, we get the 19th Amendment that would include all women and Black women as well. But it's the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, Mr. Chief Justice, that I want you to think about a little bit as you contemplate how those laws clearly on the books and the applicability of those laws were used towards Black people.
You asked a lot of complicated questions. Well, I think one of the most interesting things about Powell versus Alabama was that the court started talking about fundamental rights, fundamental due process rights. And Scottsboro case was really bizarre, and then you were talking about this. It was divided up, 9 defendants divided into 4 trials. It was 6 days after their indictments, less than 2 weeks after their arrest that these trials took place. And the trials are each about 1 day apiece. So imagine this. You have a judge who decides that these defendants are going to trial. As far as the right to counsel, that right was, the judge felt he met the commitment of that right by appointing the entire bar of the state of Alabama. Anybody who was willing to represent these gentlemen were appointed counsel, of course, knowing that no one would take them up on that. He ends up with an attorney who was not admitted in the state of Alabama, who was 7 years old, which if you asked me 20 years ago, I said that was really old. Now it seems really young. But his attorney who never practiced criminal law is not admitted in the state. So it's somewhat farcical that this counsel was competent to represent these gentlemen in a capital case. Now, every state had laws in the books that said you were entitled to an attorney in a capital case with your rights, your life is at stake. The problem is, what did that mean? And to be honest with you, we're still going through what does it mean to have competent counsel. We, in Connecticut, we have probably the most broad right habeas corpus in the entire country. And that comes down to, and you've heard of cases, I can't go into detail, you've heard of recent cases We talk about whether counsel was competent to the point that your due process rights were intact. If you had counsel that, because they were so incompetent, didn't provide you with a fair trial, you can file a habeas and end up getting a new trial. So in this case, what they did in this particular case was they said, look, there's a floor as far as due process is concerned. And if you look at all the facts in this case, you have a very, very quick time, so no discovery at all. You had attorneys who didn't know the law at all, and you had rather quick justice. And the court said that was too much. We're not going to set the floor that low. United States Supreme Court. The local court, of course, was a court that went along with the local feeling of this whole thing, which was quick justice for these women. And I think about this was everybody seemed to know that this didn't happen, that the rape didn't occur. And when it comes to, earlier you were talking about the gender issue, and one of the fascinating things about the gender issue in this case is that these women were really looked down upon in their own society. However, their privilege of whiteness was deemed enough that we can actually try these folks and kill them, because the way we do it here is you can't ever have a black person in a position where a white person is not believed, even though they didn't believe her. So you have the way they impose the law in the United States Supreme Court imposing an entirely different way. But still not to the effect of my thought. It's not a moral limit in this case. It's a legal limit of you have a fundamental right to a floor in due process.
Yes, it's not, we're going to have to move. I know as soon as we got started and Jesus got going, we're going to have to move to the next phase in the program. But I did have a question that I just don't know the answer to, then or now. Could the Supreme Court, your court, or the United States Supreme Court, if there was a case where the record demonstrated, let's say that the Sixth Amendment right was violated, courts, as in the Scottsboro boys, typically overturn the conviction if they find the constitutional violation and remand the case back to the lower court, either for a new trial. Could the court just set somebody free?
No. The law is extremely complicated. And that's why I sort of laugh when somebody says, oh, he or she got off on technicality. All the law is a technicality. And so either with my court, for example, what we tend to deal with is errors of law. As far as errors of fact, if there's anything in the record that supports that fact is a proven fact. So even if we disbelieve that fact, once a fact finder found that fact is a proven fact. So we're somewhat limited in what we can do. If we find a due process violation, and you've heard the words double jeopardy, and if jeopardy didn't attach, then you get another trial.
Yeah, another trial. That's your only remedy that can come down from the court. The court couldn't say these facts are so egregious. We've read this record. Ruby Bates recanted 10 times. We've seen it didn't happen. The court couldn't say it didn't happen. Set them free.
No.
Thanks. Well, Mr. Mitchell, I read an article in the Hartford Courant. As you can tell, I probably read a little bit of everything, trying to get ready for this evening. But I read an article in the Hartford Courant of an interview that they had done with Dr. Mitchell. And one of the things he said in that article stood out with me, and I think is a good transition point or segue to invite you in. He said that when we have these conversations, they should not be just Blacks talking about the issues and whites listening. We have a nice, diverse audience. And so it's at this point that I would like all of you to do what Mr. Mitchell has suggested and have your say as well. There are mics on each side of the room and in the middle aisle, and we'll ask you to go to the mic. If you want to direct your question to a particular panelist, they have their name tags, you can do that. Or if it's just a general question or comment.
Just a general observation. My name is Wayne Legmore. I was born and raised in the Deep South and in Hartford in 1948. And at that time, Taylor School, Dwight School, Oakley High School, I don't think I've ever had a class that had any more than 3 or 4 black boys and girls in it. I was fortunate, though, that between my house on Brown Street and Naylor School on Franklin Avenue, Johnny Schoolboy Taylor lived there with his family. And he had 3 beautiful daughters. They didn't want to have anything to do with a guy like me, but I had the pleasure of walking to school with them very often, growing up with them, and seeing a little bit of what they went through. And to me, I want to be the kind of racist, or continue to be the kind of racist that Johnny Schoolboy Taylor and Doc Hurley were. Both of those guys took plenty of slings and arrows in their whole life, and they managed to come out better, not bitter. I met Doc Hurley when I was 6 years old on a basketball court, and he was the referee. He was the most enormous man I had ever seen in my life, and one of the few black men. And you wouldn't know that there was any difference between black and white, the way he treated all of us. And at the end of those games, in which we got whopped by Bellevue Square in the Pee Wee Park Department, so we're just clapping around, feeling bad. And Dr. Hurley grabbed us in a huddle. Come here. I don't want any one of you guys to feel any less a winner than the team that scored more points. Astounding. And so I also don't believe that there is any more than one race. And Hurley and Taylor were a credit to it, the human race. And I think the word and the term racism has become such a loaded, hate-filled word that people forget. And we are all one. If you're a scientist, you say we all came from Lucy in Africa. If you're a Christian, you say we all came from Aberdeen. One race with a rainbow of ethnicities, and we should be celebrating the differences and not arguing about the differences and trying to be the first one to call someone else a name. Because I think America, with all of its warts and flaws, in its government and its mix of people, is, let's call it the cream of the crop, because there's no perfect country, but I've been all around, and this country does the best in trying to bring us all together, is what we're doing. So I don't know if that's relevant.
Thank you so much. It is relevant. Every voice is relevant, and we thank you for it. We'll go to my left.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. Thank you, everybody, for this opportunity. My name is Jamie, and I am a high school English teacher at Haddon Killingworth High School. I've been teaching for 23 years. Haddon Killingworth, Division 17, is a pretty homogeneous area. And there are a lot of reasons why that's the case. I grew up in Hamden, and I graduated from high school in '93, and I graduated with a reasonably diverse group of kids and had fantastic opportunities as a student there. I still live there my whole life. And I love my town. I love my greatest little city in America, New Haven. But I teach, and I teach in this tiny school in the woods. And I bring in the Connecticut Fair Housing Association to discuss the raising of the sun with my kids. And the Connecticut Judiciary has a speakers bureau, and I've had judges in my classroom before. Amazing kids. I have a classroom library, largely funded out of my pocket, to try to have my kids have wonderful reading experiences by their own choice, which is just sound pedagogy to begin with, but it allows for kids to read a diverse array of voices. all of that being said, To Kill a Mockingbird, I'm wrestling with that book. I'm wrestling with Atticus Finch being the Great White Hope. I'm wrestling with frankly, how long it is. So therefore, it's several weeks. And, but it's part of the canon, which is not a dirty word, because it's part of our shared cultural history. Big friggin' deal. I'm still wrestling with it. So I wonder if those of you who are particularly working with students, if you can give some insight into that, because there are constant eye rolls. I see them whenever I say that I'm wrestling with that. How could you wrestle with that? It's, all the lip service that's paid, and some and not lip service. Also, really valid points as well about the how that book is essential. Do you understand maybe what I'm getting at? Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. I'd love to hear any of your thoughts. And also, again, thank you.
Islam, great. I appreciate that book. I read it. I think it's important. It's important enough that it's come back to Broadway in a new form. And again, that speaks to the power of art to push us to places where we don't have language, as Diana was suggesting. Balance is also good. There are a lot of great books that weren't taught in high school when I was in high school. I remember wondering how long it would take for Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God to end up in high school.
Which is a book that is often taught exclusively in AP literature classes.
Yes. But it's there, and it wasn't there before, so there are definitely resources out there. So even if you're wrestling with Mockingbird, there's a tonic, I think, investing in the art community.
It doesn't only need to be taught in those classes. That's a great point. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And I probably should have been more mindful of the time and asked that you make your question as succinct as possible. We are running out of time and would like to hear from as many people as we possibly can in the limited time left.
Your Honorable Chief Justice, I have a question and/or for any of the other panelists. I'd like you to, let me take one step back. You're the second Black Chief Justice of a state that I've had the privilege to hear and know of. The Honorable Henry E. Fry from North Carolina was the first in the history of North Carolina, and I worked for him. In any event, Mr. Chief Justice, at what point in history does this divide between what citizens call themselves conservative and liberal? And when you preside over cases, do you see a trend of people who believe or have a culture of what they call conservative? Like, let me use an example, sir. Let's say that Judge Sessions from Alabama, that type of person in Connecticut, and the issue comes before your court. How do you kind of, the liberal, I'm talking about liberal and conservative, and in your judgment, when did that come into effect to allow people, some people who are just outwardly racist? And I'd just like to know from a Chief Justice, how do you, in your mind, you're sitting there.
We take your question.
Okay.
I have the honor of being on probably the most diverse court, Supreme Court in the entire United States. There was a recent article in the New York Times that was talking about the problem that the Supreme Courts aren't very diverse nationwide. But when it comes to ours, we could use some better diversity in gender. I will freely admit that. But we have Justice Raheem Mullins, Justice Khan, we have myself, and that diversity makes a difference, because when we come to the bench, when we go into, and I think Judge Elko will agree with me, when we go into conference, we don't leave who we are outside of that conference room. We take our experiences with us and how we apply the law, our experience, just like it does for white people. So this is not a situation where I'm being unfair because I am Black. We all go into that conference room with our experience, our life experiences. And so I think it's more like a prism, like a diamond. You see different facets of life. You see things in a slightly different way. And I honestly believe that when we start having more diversity in our courts and more diversity in our prosecutor's office, in our public defender's office, and in our attorneys, I think that we come to that place that you're looking at where, and I don't look at it as liberal conservative, I really don't. Because with these issues, I've seen racist liberals, I've seen racist conservatives, so it's not that. We all come with different judicial philosophies, and those remain intact. But I honestly think that we are doing better when we have a more diverse court. And so I think Connecticut is doing pretty well at this point.
Thank you for your question. Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. How much time do we have? We're going to take your question in 5 minutes.
This is going to be very quick.
Okay, that's okay.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Frank, you saw the Broadway production of Scottsboro Boys, and I'm having a difficult time understanding the thinking behind the decision to have the minstrelsy in that production. I can understand the music, but I just have a difficult time with the minstrelsy component. And sounds like the decision was made to take it out of the Hartford production. I appreciate that, but as a product of the Jim Crow South, where we spent, as African Americans, we spent a great deal of time trying to undo the perception of ourselves as ridiculous, as monkeys, as people to be laughed at. So to think that something as serious as the production of the Scottsboro Boys would be produced with a minstrel component, I just don't understand it. I think I've got a mental block that won't let me get beyond that. And I would really appreciate if you know anything about the thinking of the production there.
We're going to share this with Diana. I didn't talk to producers, so I can't speak for them at all. I do understand or appreciate Kendra and Ev's investment in telling these kinds of stories and finding mechanisms to do that. So people are familiar with Chicago, that really popular production is about murder and uses sort of the prison performance as a way of talking about that, or the one that's set in contemporary, the other things. And the other shows that they've done that really all use the mechanism, complicated, somewhat tragic mechanisms to tell these incredible stories, to give performers a chance to take us to places where the theater or art doesn't take us. But yeah, it is definitely a challenging experience to watch people in blackface. I mean, for me, what's exciting or the bit of persona there is you really can track that as an American performance idiom. And so much that we love about popular culture and popular music and finds its way through minstrelsy. And minstrelsy, as tough as it is, I talked about the level of that, and it's hideous and difficult, but it also gets us into the children's circuit. It gets us to what's happening in the 40s and 50s, the birth of rock and roll. It gets us to Chuck Berry and Little Richard and on into the 1960s. And all of those artists, and a lot of artists, really brave, powerful artists from the late 19th century, Black women, Black Patty, the Higher Sisters, all had to have their work contained in a minstrel show. As brilliant as they were 2 years out of slavery, basically, telling stories about their grandparents and the experience of slavery on stage that had to be contained in a minstrel show. It had to have comics open, and it had to have fun dancing and whatever else. But in between that were these profound, incredible female artists who were changing the experience of art for everyone. But it had to be contained within a minstrel show. And that trajectory moves us into the 20th century. It gives us culture that we have today. So I'm trying to balance that responsibility and that history with what I'm seeing on stage.
I just want to add to that really quickly. Can you hear me okay? Um, I think that also, the thing about production here in West Hartford, minstrelsy was still in the show. I mean, they didn't use they didn't use the blackface, right? They didn't use the burnt cork. But the idea and the power that you're recognizing of the minstrel form was very much there. It was very much a part of the show and a part of what people recognized. A device, a performative device that was used both to oppress and really deny humanity on the one hand, but was also reappropriated and was an avenue for other kinds of performance. And for me, blackface minstrelsy and the minstrelsy in general is also a reminder that it's a performance, whether it's imposed, a racist performance, it's still saying that's not authentic. They're caricatures. We recognize them, and they stand in for all these other things that we recognize because it's familiar, it's a stereotype, it's reductive, and yeah, it's traumatic, but it also it demonstrates that it's not authentic.
You know, if I may, I don't have a performance background, but for me, I've been thinking about this. And if you think about the Scottsboro trial, it was a minstrel show.
It was.
It was, these folks were found guilty based on caricatures of how they were perceived to be. And so to me, although it's shocking, although it's painful, that is a great deal of getting to that aspect of the Scottsboro.
And it brings up the point, it reminds me of, I believe it was Victoria Price, one of the white females who had claimed that she was raped. She literally entertained the court and the jury a lot of times during her testimony. And they openly laughed. I mean, she would make a mockery and she literally entertained them. So yes, it was in and of itself a minstrel show. We can take perhaps one more question.
Okay. Hello.
Hi.
I am a training grad, so it's good to see you. And I would love to talk to you after. And my question is about the history of America in regards to Black life. And telling a story. I'm an artist, and I am and I act and dance, and I often find it difficult to tell our stories authentically, given the vast different ethnicities in the United States in regards to Blackness. So I am asking this question as a challenge of hiring Black American descendant of slavery actors and people who descend from Jim Crow, who descend from slavery, to tell that truth. Because oftentimes, like the product period, we have a lot of people who are not ethnically Black American descendants of slavery, not knowing our history and telling our stories to continue the dangerous aspect of the minstrel show. They come in, they get a check, and then they keep it moving. And we are often ignored. Speaking as a descendant, I want to talk about that history and how we can further include Black Americans in our history so we can tell our story. Thank you.
I think part of the answer to your question may relate right back to what Mr. Chief Justice just said about the courts. That to the extent that we are a part of the decision making, then that is the extent to which we can at least have some credible say in the outcome. And you should be proud that you have African American producers who are telling our story. And so if that's what it took and that's what it takes, then we have to continue to try to empower them. But they're not the only ones. The story is being told, and we can look around here and applaud everyone sitting to the side of us for being here, because they too are a part of the story, and they too want the story to be told. And if there's something to be learned, here you have a group of people who are manifesting that they are part of trying to forge a better tomorrow. I'm going to turn it back over to Rob to close this out before you leave. Rob will have some closing words.
I just simply want to say thank you to our panel, to the moderator, and to everyone that was here this evening. My hope as director here at the Historical Society is that we continue the conversation and that we continue having active and progressive dialogue as a community. So thank you for being here, and I invite you to come back again and to enjoy what this community has to offer. Thank you.